Well, you're in my favorite stock has been all over the place this morning, but not by large amounts. It was a little bit up in the pre-market, then a little bit down. Now it was up four, now currently up a buck or so. We'll see what it is 20 minutes from now when we finish up. But I wouldn't call it directionless. The market in general is pretty choppy also with the NASDAQ down and the Dow down and the NASDAQ up. And we'll check on those numbers later as well. All right, what do we got here? The first story of the day, probably the most important story of the day, and maybe it's part of what's going on in terms of the stock, is that Uber CEO Dara, I'm not going to even try, told the Financial Times that competing with Elon Musk is not easy, and he would love to get Tesla's robotaxis on the Uber platform when it's ready to roll out. He said they will either partner, compete, or combine the two, but it's up to Tesla. So AJ responded to that right away. He says, number one, Uber's large investment into making people acquainted with ride hailing perfectly prepared the ground for Tesla robotaxis. People have become used to ordering taxis via an app. Number two, nobody uses Uber because it's an amazing service. Everybody uses Uber because it's a lot cheaper and easier to use than available alternatives. I'm assuming he means regular cabs. Number three, robotaxi will be even easier to use and even cheaper alternative. That's by a lot, in my opinion. As I've said before, no offense to Uber drivers, but not great. I mean, I'm not talking about their driving style. I'm just talking about having to deal with them, talk to them, sometimes lots of smells in the car. I've even had propaganda for their religions in the car. Yeah, so the robotaxis will be a lot better in many, many, many regards. Number four, there's no customer loyalty to Uber. There's no Uber brand appeal. Nobody boasts to friends about, hey, I took an Uber today. Number five, people will happily switch from a human Uber driver, which is what I just said. Okay, hence the very first Tesla robotaxi users will be current Uber users. That's why Uber will be the first roadkill when Tesla's robo ride-hailing network starts. And he says, you know what? It's obvious. He finishes with that. Barron's has this morning, says some stakeholders felt better about what Tesla showed. Sandy Monroe said, hey, no steering wheels, no pedals, no nothing. We all know who Sandy Monroe is. He says, this is like being chauffeured, but in the front seat instead of the rear seat. This is absolutely brilliant. And, that's another point, I guess, with regard to Uber and regular taxi cabs versus the Cybercab. Hadn't really thought about it that way. Don't care that much about the back seat versus the front seat, but there is a definite difference in the feel. Elon's talked about the experience, other people, and I've definitely talked about the experience, how important that is. And in a luxurious, very much a huge amount of legroom. The chairs are really, really nice. Um, uh, in the front seat, so to speak. Yeah, I can see some of those advantages there. Turning back to AJ this morning, he's always bringing out lots and lots of stats about how Tesla is doing in various markets. He says Tesla's Germany market share against private buyers has been growing significantly for three consecutive quarters. The German market is somewhat unusual because 67% of all new vehicle sales originate from commercial buyers due to significant incentives and the popular company vehicle employee perk. This is a normal thing in Germany. Since employees driving company vehicles incur no fuel cost, employees disproportionately opt out for ICE vehicles instead of BEVs. This is significantly skews the underlying consumer preference data. Now, remember, I think that AJ lives part of the time, at least in Germany. So Gary Black says this morning he is estimating 60 cents a share for Tesla earnings. AJ currently has reported 50 cents as his guess, and the street is at 67 cents. There are some pundits out there at 70 and some pundits as low as 40 so far. Sir Basher reporting in from his trip from southern Florida to Calgary says, and by the way, he's not going on a straight line. So this morning he went 700 miles to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. He says that was a lot less than yesterday. He said the number of necessary highway disengagements, 0. The number of necessary city street FSD disengagements, 1. He gave a couple of guys a demo, and the car pulled out in front of a dump truck that was going about 50 miles an hour. He said the Cybertruck is tough, but that would have ended badly if he had not intervened. Of course, we will never know whether the dump truck would have been able to stop in time, but I gather he thought not. Matt Smith is coming in this morning. I haven't had a lot of occasion. If you don't know who Matt Smith is, he is a partner in Rebellionaires over there with Bradford Ferguson. Matt says, the most important metric by far for Tesla, and by the way, he's a very solid analyst, for Tesla right now is the rate of improvement in miles per critical intervention. If Tesla can deliver several 5 to 10 times improvements over the next coming quarters, they could actually launch FSD unsupervised next year, as Elon claimed they would. But launching several 5 to 10 times improvements is no small task. I don't think they need several 5 to 10 times improvements. That's just me. So what do we actually know? Elon said recently that getting interventions getting those down was actually the limiting factor to FSD improvement. Here's the quote verbatim. The limiting factor right now is that the amount of miles between interventions is so long that it takes quite a while to figure out which version is better than another version. If you start getting to thousands of miles between interventions, or 10,000 miles to get an intervention, then, well, the average person only drives 10,000 miles a year. So this is where actually having a giant fleet is extremely important, because we can deploy a great FSD model and run it in shadow mode and see how well it performs, and then be able to assess by getting billions of miles very quickly. So we know that Tesla is running its newest models in shadow mode, and we know that with this data, Tesla is highly confident version 13 will have a 6 times improved miles between necessary interventions. Version 13 is supposedly going to go wide in this month. And in my mind, the most significant signpost we have on whether Tesla can actually deliver robotaxis in the foreseeable future. If they actually do achieve this level of performance, then getting new interventions will become even more of a struggle, as Elon noticed. And then the question will turn into whether getting to the next 6-time improvement will take months or even longer, because of this problem of not having anything to enough data to make the decision. It says version 13 will have a necessary intervention only once every 1,000 miles or so. Another 6x would give it to 6,000. And our lived experience at that level would be there's almost never a need for interventions. Also, if Teslas can stack 2 major improvements back to back in a matter of months, then Elon's timeline of FSD unsupervised in Texas and California next year would suddenly seem more credible and available. We could be in a scenario where by January, every FSD user experiences firsthand an incredible improvement, and the path to true autonomy seems imminent. On the other hand, it's easy to imagine a scenario where version 13 doesn't deliver a noticeable improvement, or if it does, the next 6 times improvement takes a long time. For this reason, I will continue to pound home the message that the pace of improvement of miles per critical intervention, single most important metric. From Doge Designer this morning, he goes by CB_Doge on X. He says, breaking, Elon Musk just announced that by early next year, SpaceX will attempt to catch the StarShip itself, not just the Super Heavy booster. That's exciting. And from Barron's Al Root this morning, sometimes Wall Street and Main Street don't always line up on a given topic. That appears to be the case now with electric vehicles, whether a Tesla or a Nissan. Slowing sales growth resulting in EV spending delays from global automakers has left Wall Street wondering if battery-powered cars are the future of personal transportation after all. Car buyers and even car dealers are feeling better than ever about the new technology. EV enthusiasm is as high as it's ever been, says BJ Birtwell, CEO and founder of Electrify Expo, North America's largest EV festival that tours the U.S. and stopped on Long Island outside of Nassau Coliseum this past weekend. Now, he would have a reason to say that. You know, he's going to have a little bit of a bias. There are some changes, though. Early adopters and environmental enthusiasts have made their way through the purchase funnel, says Birtwell. Now we're getting EV skeptics and EV curious, and it's about practical car buying conversations. That's good news for car buyers and automakers. And if there are practical EV models available, and there were dozens on display this past weekend, and attendees could drive them, there were more than 20,000 demo rides took place. This is Randy Kirk. Bet you knew that. Hit like, hit subscribe, please. Don't just think about it, do it. And then, what do we have today? We have Brian White later today. Very fun show. Yeah, we were giving each other high fives for the show that's coming up today. So take a look at that one later today. And then we have, of course, yeah. What? I got to keep my nights straight. We have Nicholas Gibbs tonight, and of course, that's always an outstanding show. Nicholas is just getting better and better at his analysis. And then Patreon. That would really, really be helpful. It's about round 2 of bank earnings, and once again, the signs are good. Goldman Sachs stock, this is from CNBC, I think. Goldman Sachs stock jumped pre-market after it reported it's Market Watch, after it reported forecast beating results. Bank of America and Citigroup's shares also advanced because their earnings fell less than feared, okay? The results built on reassuring reports Friday from JP Morgan and Wells Fargo. We reported on that on Friday. So we're gonna be looking later today. I wanna see what their earnings calls look like, and I'll bring that up when we're talking to yeah, I'm okay. In our reporting later today. Empire State Manufacturing Survey, mixed results from the Empire State Survey. After briefly picking up last month, you'll remember it was shocking how much it picked up last month. Yeah, it slid back down. The General Business Conditions Index fell 23 points to 11.9. New Order Index fell 20 points to negative. That was a negative 11.9. This is a negative 10.2. And Shipments Index fell 21 points to a negative 2.7. Declines in orders and shipments. Unfilled orders were little changed. Inventories index fell 8 points to 7.5, indicating that inventories were lower. The delivery times index edged down 3.2, suggesting delivery times were shorter. And the supply availability index fell 5 to negative 7.5, a sign that supply availability worsened in October. However, there were employment increases. So that was surprising given all of that, but it might be because optimism grew. Though firms reported that activity declined overall this month, optimism about the outlook grew strongly. The index for future business activity moved up 8 points to 38.7, and 55% of respondents expected conditions to improve over the next 6 months. Now, that could be from a horrible low. Sorry. Wall Street Journal this morning reporting Google will back the construction of 7 small nuclear power reactors in the U.S., a first-of-its-kind deal that aims to help feed the tech company's growing appetite for electricity to power AI and jumpstart a U.S. nuclear revival. We reported earlier on Google's indication that this was happening. Apparently it's done. Under the deal's terms, Google committed to buy power generated by these 7 reactors to be built by nuclear energy startup Kairos, K-A-I-R-O-S Power. The agreement targets about adding 500 megawatts of nuclear power starting at the end of the decade. The arrangement is the first that would underpin the commercial construction in the U.S. of small nuclear reactors. This is I reported this constantly. This is exciting. Many say that technology is the future of domestic nuclear power industry and potentially enabling faster and less costly construction because you're going to build these things in mass rather than on bespoke plants. The end goal here is 24/7 carbon-free energy, said Michael Terrell, Senior Director for Energy and Climate at Alphabet's Google. We feel like in order to meet goals for around-the-clock clean energy, you're going to need to have technologies that complement wind and solar and lithium-ion storage. The nuclear power industry's fortunes are increasingly getting hitched to big tech. Power demand is rising, and it's going to continue to rise. Last month, Constellation Energy and Microsoft struck a deal to restart Pennsylvania's 3 Mile Island, the 500 megawatts of generation. That would be built by Kairos for Google is about enough to power a mid-sized city. The agreement answers questions that have bedeviled small reactor designs. What customer would pay the higher price for a first-of-a-kind deal? So the 3 Mile Island was a much higher price, double, I believe, on the per kilowatt hour basis. And this is going to be obviously at a higher price too. Cairo plans to deliver the reactors between around 2030 and 2035. Financial terms were not disclosed, but the companies entered into a power purchase agreement. The project site on whether there could be were not disclosed of where they're going to put them. The most difficult part, they say, is, of course, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, but they already have clearance to build a demonstration reactor in Tennessee, which could start as early as 2027. I love all that news. That is really fantastic, fun news. All right, Tesla continues to stay in the green, even as the markets are going down at this point. So Tesla's up $2.49, about the midpoint of what it's done so far this morning. The Dow is down 181, NASDAQ down 26, S&P down 2.44. This, at some point you have to have a back and fill. You've got to have some kind of a pause, at least, in these indices just going higher and higher. I've been calling for a pullback. Since I've been calling for a pullback, the market's gone up another who knows percent. And so a 5 or 10% pullback would not be a shock. Okay, the Magnificent Seven is mixed with Apple and Google, also up. Apple strongly, and the rest of them are down. NVIDIA losing $4.87. We've got the Cathie Woods, very mixed, some up, some down. Just completely mixed. So that would make the Dow down 0.39%, NASDAQ down 0.19%, S&P down 0.05%, and Tesla up 0.88%. All right, let's go. We know the bonds were actually headed down earlier. Let's see if that's still true. Okay, finally. The 10-year is down 2.4 basis points, still at 4.049, call it 4.05%, but that's better than 4.1. I would love to get it back under 4. Directionality is everything, so let's hope it starts to keep on. The bond buyers come back into the long bonds. The 2-year is up 0.4% at 3.945. What is the 3-month? Actually up a tad. How about the 2-month? Finally falling some. There you go. 0.8 of a basis point. Oil was coming down dramatically this morning. Apparently, there's a huge surplus. There's lots of surplus capacity. OPEC is Saudi Arabia is saying they're going to start shipping more. So oil now back down to $70.60, down 4.37% this morning. Brent also down, but almost $4 higher at 74.32. Middle East is part of this. Israel saying that they're not going to bomb Iran's oil facilities. That could be also a part of why it's down so strongly this morning, 4.35%. Natural gas up a bit this morning after being down several days in a row, $2.50. That's up 0.52. Gold has now, it's up $10, 2,676. I think it's likely to go back over 2,700. That is not investment advice. I don't even have any idea why I think that. It's gut. Silver up 1.53% this morning at 31.8. Copper down a full percent at 4.36. The dollar down against both the Japanese yen and the euro, 0.38 against the yen and 0.06% against the euro. You've got the Bitcoin up another 794 at 667 now, 66,766. So strong performance right now. I mean, way off of the 74,000 that it was a month or so ago. We have got, there you go. That is everything. So Nick, at tonight on the happy hour, okay, we'll have Nick Gibbs on as always on Tuesday, and we assume, I haven't talked to Nick in a while, and he's been, of course, cleaning up all kinds of problems in Florida after the hurricane, but I'm assuming he'll be on tonight, and then Brian White later today, and that is a show you don't want to miss. I mean, seriously, we talked about a whole range of subjects that are very, very critical to the future of Tesla. And I think you're going to enjoy the show. And then, yeah. Oh, let's take one more look at Tesla. We have got, yep, it's losing now. Oh no, now we're down to only up 7 cents. A big strike down. Apple striking down. Google's, the ones that were up are all now turning lower as the Dow continues down. Don't know why. I mean, except for being overextended, but that wouldn't affect Tesla. Certainly not overextended at this point. But we'll see what happens as the day progresses. Oh yes, one last thing. Yesterday, Brian White and I did a very fun situation where we flipped. I asked him a set of questions, and then on his channel we reversed it, and same questions with me answering what I was thinking about all the 20 kind of stuff from the 1010, what I thought that it meant, what we're really looking at in terms of the vehicle that was presented and how it plays out over time, why they won't be making them till 2026. That was one of the more interesting parts. You should probably go take a look at that, and why Brian thinks it will actually be 2026 before we see Cybercabs. All right, that's it. That's all I got for you right now. It has been great talking to you as always. And I missed it. I missed the off button.